Welcome back to the Value Added Podcast. Jared and Bill here. I know it's been some weeks, some months really since we've posted an episode, so we're glad you're tuning in again. Did take a little bit of a break there for the summer
break. Yeah, it was nice actually.
We had a trip. Did we have a trip?
Yeah, we did. We went to Scotland.
We did.
Had a good time.
Yeah, 20 years of marriage for my bride and I.
And 30 years for my bride and I. So we thought we would celebrate 50 years together, and we went to Scotland. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it was awesome. But we are back. Really, we're pretty excited about the near future. We've got a handful of topics to cover, and then we actually have a series that we're going to jump into. So we're kind of super excited about some of this stuff and where we're going to go.
Yeah.
So keep tuning in. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're talking about something that may be a bit sensitive, I think. I know for me, when we started planning it, I was like,
Yeah, I was questioning a lot, how's this going to land, right? And how people are going to react to this, because for many, it's a sensitive topic.
It is, yeah. And especially for those of you who have children, you may want to buckle up and kind of take notice here. But let me start with a quote. This comes from Anna Ludwig. She says, depending on your demographic, you probably spend over 3 hours a day, that's over 9 years of your life, looking at your phone.
And that's just your phone. There's other screens we use too along the way.
Yes, sir.
So that's just phone time on average. Yeah.
So today we're talking about screen addiction, particularly overcoming screen addiction while leading a team is going to be important for us as leaders. Again, if you're tuning in and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be helpful for so-and-so and so-and-so, here at the Value Added Podcast, we like to say, think about yourself first, how you can improve.
Yep.
But if there is somebody you're thinking of too, that this obviously we would hope this content would help. So overcoming screen addiction is where we're going today. And again, that quote, depending on your demographic, you probably spend over 3 hours a day. That's over 9 years of your life on average looking at your phone. And obviously there's other screens to take into consideration. So Bill, give us a little bit of screen addiction, what we're talking about here.
Yeah, let's define it a little bit. And this is from the Addiction Center, just to be aware that it is officially categorized as an addiction. Not that if we use a screen, it automatically means we're addicted. But here's their definition of screen addiction. Screen addiction is when a person uses technology excessively and becomes dependent on it. It can mainly involve smartphones, tablets, computers, and televisions. We're all familiar with each of those. It is identified by a compulsive need to use those electronic devices, regardless of the negative impacts on daily activities, obligations such as work, school, social relationships. So have you ever said, oh, I just need 5 more minutes, knowing that's taking time away from a task at work, your exercise routine, conversations with your spouse, with your children. And then you may want to start to ask, well, maybe I'm not addicted, but maybe I am.
Yeah, I think we're all going to fall on different
scales,
on this whole spectrum here.
Yeah.
But I think what I want to point out before you jump into some other stuff here is the word excessively in their definition.
Yeah.
When a person uses it excessively, right, then it becomes, you can become dependent on it. And there are definitely some negative things that will come from over usage of screens and technology in that sense. And then the other thing that I think was a great call out here was that there are implications on relationships, school, work, but particularly those relationships, because obviously here at the Value Added Podcast, we talk about influence being what leadership is. Yeah. And if we're trying to influence our team in our own downfalls or, dare I say, addictions in this area, could play into the very, very relationships we're trying to mold, shape, and grow.
Very much so. Very much so. And technology's not going away.
No.
It's a tool. Just like anything, you could say money can be an addiction for some, but it's also a tool for others to, take care of the family. That's my number one tool, to make sure there's a roof over the family's head and clothing on the kids' back, and and a tool so I can save up for my retirement and live within my means and that. So in the same way, technology is not going to go away. If anything, it's going to become more integrated into our lives, but it's really up to us to decide what boundaries
Yeah.
are we going to set for ourselves as we use it? So boundaries are important.
So let's talk for a minute if we can. But by the way, if you're like, oh, I'm going to tune out of this, I know about the negative effects. We are going to talk in a few minutes about some of the positives of screen time. So just know we're going to balance this out. But before we do that, we definitely want to tackle the more of the negative kind of effects of screen time, and then the problems, the challenges that we may face.
Yeah, as we talked about earlier, just think about this in terms of if you as a leader are dealing with excessive screen time, it's a struggle, and maybe it's a minor or larger one and on a scale, as we said, what kind of impact is that having on those you're leading, right? We kind of think about this, oh, so-and-so has a screen addiction, I should help them with it. But we want to kind of stand in front of the mirror and ask ourselves, how is this impacting me and my leadership, right? Is it distraction? Is it reduced focus? Is it impaired communication? Am I not putting my attention on this person when they really need that extra coaching or development or what have you? But some of the effects of excessive screen time, I'm going to list these again. This is from, again, the Addiction Center website. Yeah, thank you. So this can cause, again, at varying degrees, increased stress and anxiety, impairs your social skills, it decreases physical activity, it can slow cognitive development, it can diminish your creativity, mood swings, right? If you're really into your screen and something from outside comes in and pulls you away, it's like, what? You kind of thing. And I'm guilty of that at times. I get tunnel vision, and my wife's kind of asking me a question, and I have to shift gears completely to make sure she gets the focus she deserves. So mood swings, emotional instability, cyberbullying, for students and kids, reduced attention span. We've seen that throughout our culture. We've had young adults comment to us in our church service, why do I want to sit and listen to a talking head for 40 minutes? They don't have the attention span for that or other activities. Can lower self-esteem, avoidance behavior, and just kind of impair academic performance as a result for students. So, and this isn't just something that's affecting students. It affects us of all ages because screens have it just inundated our culture, society, and how we do things.
Yeah. It's interesting too to me because years ago, it used to be if I'm having a conversation, right, and I kind of glance at my watch, you sent a message that you had somewhere else to be, something else to do.
Place to go.
Right, place to go. Now with screens, I think it's Simon Sinek who gives a great, message about this. And just having your phone out or on the table sends an odd message of disconnect there.
He does.
And obviously, this is just one of those areas that we may decide to cover in this episode. But I think when I hear things like reduced attention span, it all plays into that for me personally. You know what I'm saying? Like I notice when there's too much of the screen time, and then my ability to just look someone in the eye and
hold that
conversation going in a meaningful, deep way.
Right.
Because I've got my phone blowing up or vibrating in my pocket. And my addiction, my tendency, if I can use those words, is to like reach for it to see who's trying to.
Yeah.
And it's just that one simple thing is enough for us to have a discussion on this.
It's worth having.
Right.
That alone makes it worth it.
But we talked about a lot of different negatives, just listed them.
Yeah. So in all honesty, how has screen affected us negatively, right? Let's talk about that for a second. I've been a gamer since the Atari 2600. I enjoy gaming, but there's been times and seasons in my life it's become compulsive, where I've set aside and put off tasks at home projects, or even delayed tasks at work that would have been more efficient, better quality if I'd done them sooner rather than waiting till the last minute. And then I go, okay, I know I need to stop. And what I'll do is I'll put it away, right? I'll fast, for lack of a better word, and totally disconnect from it. But there's other things that kind of bond relationships. Like we have family movie night with the kids growing up. We would get a blanket out, put it on the living room floor, kind of have a picnic meal there, enjoy and talk about and watch the movie and talk about it afterwards. And we still kind of, all my kids are grown, and we still kind of, have you seen this movie? What'd you think? And it's a point of social conversation for us. So there's been good and bad in that for me, and creating those boundaries and asking my wife to hold me accountable to those boundaries. And having a friend like Jared who has an open invitation to ask me the tough questions. Hey, are you doing this well? Has really helped create some boundaries that made me a whole lot more healthy in regards to it. So that's been my story. What about you?
So I'm answering how do screens affect me negatively, or how have they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if they had.
Yeah, no, I think I could definitely say yes, they have affected me negatively. And for me, I'm a binge watcher. So I have a hard time not just allowing the Netflix, or the Amazon or whatever platform I'm using to just go ahead and play the next episode. And so you end up big chunks of time. And one of the particular ways that I've seen this play out negatively is at the end of the day, like we've all had a long day. The girls have had their soccer games or practices, and everyone's exhausted. Everybody just wants to check out for an hour or two before bedtime. So everybody just grabs their phone. Dad watches TV. Girls will be doing reels or texting their friends, and mama will be reading a book or just scrolling through her social media pages, whatever she does on her phone, and we'll just kind of have this little bit of a time. And what we've noticed is the disconnect can get real if we allow that to be like an every night thing. So, and then for me, I'll put it to you this way. Recently, my wife grabbed the board game. I don't know if your kids ever played this. You had two daughters, but the board game called Mall Madness.
Nope.
It's like an early, I want to say it's early 90s game. And it's just the board game is like, has the mall in it, and you get a little character. And the whole point is to make 6 purchases and then get out of the mall and you win. But you end up running out of money. You got to go to the ATM. You can send friends different places. It's all voice controlled. It's a super silly, but I found a super fun game. And the reason I bring this up is because this was one of the creative ways my wife has found to bring us together, as opposed to kind of like your movie night.
Yeah.
So, we've had to kind of have times where everybody just shuts off and we come together at the table to play a board game instead of everybody's, disconnected. But for me personally, it's definitely the binge watching. I'll get sucked into a show and I'll just have to watch the whole thing. And then, you got big chunks of time that will go by. And like you, there's other things I could be doing that are much more productive or may need to be addressed sooner rather than later. But instead, I find myself procrastinating those when I'm in binge watch mood. So,
and I think, again, we're talking about boundaries. And I think if you're on vacation and you're setting aside a day to binge watch intentionally on vacation, there's no other responsibilities. I think that's okay. I think that if that's planned and said that's my limit and I'm done my limit and I stick to it, that's one thing, right?
Right.
But if it's in the middle of our everyday routine life, responsibilities are being impacted by it, I think that's where it becomes problematic.
No, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And again, what's really difficult, I think for me personally, I know you've mentioned this too, again, I didn't want to beat a dead horse, but most of the time when we're talking about the negative, effects of screen time, it's always the something else that could be getting done during that time.
Yep.
Not that you need to be productive. I get it, every minute of the day, but that could be just relational building. And when you bring this into the aspect of being a leader, and you're thinking about the negative impacts, that I think is almost another step down a dark rabbit hole.
Yeah, I mean, if you're putting off conversations to maintain that screen time, if you are isolating yourself from others just to go into your man cave, woman cave, flip through TikTok so you can just do that rather than have the conversations and socially engage, that's when we go, maybe that's a problem.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to think about some healthy boundaries and have someone help me keep accountable. And we're going to talk about some practical strategies here in a little bit, but let's get into the positives. Well, you mentioned there are some positives, and there are some positives to screen time, right?
Yeah.
It's quality, not quantity, right?
Right.
So talk to us about some of those.
Yeah, so I found these from mybaba.com, which I believe is a blogging and website. Kind of found it on random, but I liked their 6 reasons why screen time may be helpful or beneficial for kids. And when I read the section for kids, I was like, man, this would actually be good for myself, as an adult. But I wanted to share them for, because we like here at the Value Added Podcast, we like to make links with leadership and parenting just because we can.
Yep.
And it works so well. So I decided, hey, let's grab these. But so these are 6 reasons, again, why screen time may be pretty beneficial for kids. Again, this is under the assumption that this is going to be a segmented, controlled screen time.
Boundaries,
not a
yeah.
free-for-all.
Right.
Boundaries. But
Yeah.
so the number one is they give for kids on screens is development of fine motor skills, which I was like, oh yeah, that would make perfect sense.
It would, yeah. Eye-hand coordination and
Yes, exactly. And obviously they have apps too that, for their hands and their eyes and their fingers and just, their fine motor skills. So I thought that was a good call out.
But the flip side of that is if all you're doing is using screen time to develop fine motor skills, that's a different. I mean, if you're taking them outside to play catch, you take them
Right.
bowling, then
Right.
that also helps develop those fine motor
Yes, it
skills.
does.
But it is a positive. It does help them to develop those motor skills for sure.
Yeah. And the second one is problem solving skills. Depending on what they're doing on the screens, there's so many fantastic apps that help kids learn how to solve problems, using their intellect.
Right.
So that's another great call out. Again, you could do the same thing outside or in the shop with dad or whatever, but it is true.
I got an interesting or maybe even funny story about that. Recently, I don't have permission, so I'm not going to share names. I had breakfast with a dear friend from my church who grew up differently than I did with different house rules. And, we're near the same age and at this point. And we just spent a lot of time in meetings at church together. And I said, hey, let's go out for breakfast and get to know each other a little bit. Yeah. And so we were talking a little bit. And so he asked me, what do you do for fun? And I said, well, knowing his background and some comments he's made that, gaming is evil and it's a waste of time and it deadens your brain. And it's, excessiveness does, yes. But I said, well, you're not going to like this, but I game. I play game. And I described one of the games I play as you're a 4-person squad and you're out to rescue hostages and, you send a sniper up on Overwatch to watch for targets and then 2 cause a distraction. Another one sneaks in to rescue the hostage. And he goes, that sounds like chess. I said, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It helps me develop problem-solving skills to a situation and how to react in the moment as things change, right? So that in itself, it helps for me anyway, develop those problem-solving skills. So.
Yeah. And the third one is social skills, which I thought was interesting, a call out for kids on with screen. And again, that's depending on what you're using, different programs, different apps, but they can learn how to interact and how to do so properly.
Right.
Words to use and things like that. School readiness was another one, number 4. Yep. Again, depending on your apps, your programs, school readiness. I know for my daughter, started reading at a very young age. My oldest, I don't even remember how old she was. She was reading full sentences and books, and I was like, holy smoke. But she did that simply because it wasn't a screen, but it might as well have been. It was a little leapfrog magnetic tool that you stick on your refrigerator, and it had all the letters of the alphabet.
Yeah.
And so she could take whichever one she wanted to. She could stick it in and hit it, and it would say, B says buh, B says buh, and just sing a little song about the sounds that B makes, and would do that for each letter. And so, she would have a little passy in her mouth, and we would be like, Ada, where's the C? And she would just look at all the letters, they're all jumbled, and she'd pick the C and she'd stick it in, and she'd take her pacifier out, and she would sing the song, put the pacifier out, and you'd tell her to get another one, and she would do that. And we even would lower it, and she would just sit there at the bottom of the fridge and just do the letters. She loved it. But that allowed her to be ready to read when it came time for schooling. It was literally her best subject. She could read, and her teachers were like, she's reading like the encyclopedia. And, and we would just laugh because we owed all that credit to that stupid little leapfrog thing that was actually pretty annoying. But they have those same apps and same things on the screens for kids. Yeah. And so it's kind of, the school readiness is a big deal. Creativity is another one.
It is.
Kids can learn a lot about creativity with screens.
We also talked earlier, it's a symptom that can kill your creativity. It
can.
It depends on, it's the quality of the content you're consuming on the screen.
In the time, too.
Right? In the time. Right. Very much so.
Yeah, it's one of those positive negative things where if they get too much of it, again, just the physical screens in your eyes and all of that, there's links to psychology and whatever you want to
Right.
talk about there. But so again, and the last one is literacy and communication skills, which I thought was a really good call out. So again, those 6 things, reasons why screens can be utilized positively for kids is development of fine motor skills, problem solving, social skills, school readiness, creativity, literacy and communication skills. And again, we've all learned, at least in my adult life, some of those things via screens. So those are just some positives we wanted to call out for those of you who are like, screens are good. We get it.
Yeah.
So if you had to say for yourself, Bill, what was a way you mentioned problem solving was a positive for you. Was there any other positives for screen time? It's okay if there's not. I was just curious.
It's a relaxation for me too, but the temptation is to fall too. I just want to be relaxed all the time, which isn't fair because that takes my time and attention away from my wife. It takes time and attention away from my kids. I'm stealing from them when I do that. Yeah. So having a healthy boundary, okay, I have this 1 hour. I'm going to get on my PlayStation for this 1 hour. And no matter where I am, if I've accomplished what I want to accomplish or not, I turn it off. Yeah. I'm done, right? Yeah. So, it is. It's a relaxation for screen time. But problem solving, creativity helps foster some of my creativity. There's actually been some solutions I've thought of while playing that I brought to problems at work.
Oh, you mentioned that before to me. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool.
So it has. So there's a couple others. What about you?
Yeah, no, I would say definitely along the same veins as you. There's been through screen time, whether it's reading or movies, I've used quotes and such for for teachings, analogies, and so there's all kinds of those, positives. Oh, well, and then for the family time was another big one for us. We definitely like to just pack kids and go see a movie in a theater and get the popcorn and smother it with butter and just have a good time with controlled screen time. That's been a positive. And then again, using it for what I do in my pastoral roles has been a big positive.
Yeah,
people are visual, so when I get to spend time, creating things with my iPad or PowerPoint, which by the way I did my own this week, which was kind of cool.
Good.
So yeah, those are just some of the positives that I see with screens for myself. Yeah. So again, negatives, but there are a lot of positives.
Boundaries. It's all about the boundaries.
Yeah, so we've said we're going to talk about how you as a leader, why are we talking about this again? And then maybe how do we create boundaries for ourselves?
Yeah, so again, if we are spending too much time on our screens, it's taking away from something. It's not an either or, right? If it's a healthy amount, if there's boundaries to it, that's one thing. But if it's causing us to put off or put away or not engage, that is not due diligence for those who we lead. And that maybe is just being a leader in the home, to be a positive example, not only to our children, but to our significant others, our spouses, or whoever that may be for you.
Teams we're
leading, right? And not putting the effort in preparation for an upcoming event, meeting, activity. Just think if Jared here put aside all his time for screen time rather than getting ready for next youth activity that you run, right?
Yep.
And you're not prepared. You don't have the quality behind the activities that you were hoping for. You didn't think through all the rules for the game. And
could be anything,
a lot of things. And for me at work, if I don't think through this correctly for this project, I miss out a detail that causes a loss of money for the company because it went excessively too long or too far or impacted our customers or what have you. So that may be a big, broad picture, but it's kind of reality. Having boundaries is a very healthy thing. So let's talk about just some very quick, general, none of these are surprising. We've kind of hinted at them as we've been having our conversation today. Yeah. And I'll give myself an example. I like to game, but I work on a computer screen 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and then I'll watch a TV show at the end of my day just to unwind. And
for 10 hours,
it's screen. And all that screen time is not healthy for our eye muscles. They get tired, right? So one thing you can do physically for yourselves is follow the 20-20 rule, 20-20-20 rule, 3 20s. Look at something every 20 minutes, look up at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds. That just gives those eye muscles that are zeroed in and focused here an opportunity to relax and get some rest from that strain by looking off, looking the distance, 20 seconds.
20 feet
Right?
away.
It's like when you go to the gym, you don't go right from one set to another set to another set. You take breaks between your weightlifting sets to give, replenishment.
It could be 30 seconds if you're doing CrossFit. Could be a little
Whatever
longer
it
if you've
is.
done a big. Yeah, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah. So the 20-20-20 rule is one thing you can do. And the other, you want to take the next one?
Time limits is super important boundary to set. There's been, again, some of this is coming from the Addiction Center, which has been so helpful.
Yeah.
But they're saying time limits. Studies have recommended limiting personal screen time to 30 minutes a day, or whatever that may look like for you. This may be a drastic change for a lot of us if we're like, I watch like 3 hours a night before I fall asleep. But limiting screen use to to that 1 hour, 30 minutes, what have you, can be very beneficial. And also, taking breaks from screens. Bill mentioned the 20-20-20 rule, but there's also the sense in which if you can get those 3 to 4 hour breaks from screens, someone like Bill who works 8 hours a day, if you're like that, and then you come home, take a couple hours for looking at another screen, and that's.
Or even seasonally, there will be seasons where I put my PlayStation away for 6-8 months, just intentionally to get that break from it, to kind of give that kind of a seasonal time limit to it. So,
right. So you've got the 20-20 rule, you've got time limits, and implementing those and how they may fit into your personal schedules. But then there's also, they also mentioned just a full-blown digital detox.
Yeah, how do you kill an appetite? You starve it to death. If you ever have gone without food or fasted or intermittent fasting, or you get ready for a colonoscopy, you got to kind of get ready for that by limiting foods and drinking what they have you drink to clean your system out.
Right.
Your body adjusts to that, right? That's how you kill an appetite. You starve it. So, the first day you're really hungry, the next day you're even more hungry. By going on to the third day, it's like, I don't have an appetite. I'm not hungry. I could go all day, not a problem. And it kills, starving it out kills that appetite. It's the same thing for the digital world, detoxing it. And maybe that takes longer for your brain to rebalance itself after being on that screen, getting those, those quick fixes all the time of flip, and achieve, or click, play a game, win, whatever it is. Putting aside for a digital detox and just saying, I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go outside.
Take a walk.
In all honesty, self-confession, there's been times where I've spent an hour on my PlayStation, then I went outside to walk the dogs. I'm like, man, it's really nice out here. I should have been out here for the last hour, right?
Yeah.
And just in the spring and summer here in the Northeast, it's just refreshing and relaxing, and just
exactly
to be outside and sit on the porch or deck and watch the birds on the bird feeder or whatever it is.
So what do we do?
Yeah,
That's the next question. I mean, obviously, we wanted to tackle this. We said we'd probably be amiss if we didn't.
Yeah.
At least on our podcast, to cover in brief, in kind of broad stroke, this whole idea of being addicted to screens or too much screen time, limiting screen time, creating boundaries. So we didn't want to wrap things up without giving you a couple things to think through and one thing to do.
Yeah, and you found a really good quote that summarizes this.
Yeah.
Share that quote with our audience.
Addiction is giving up everything for one thing. Recovery is giving up one thing for everything.
Yeah, or everyone.
Right. Addiction is giving up everything for one thing. But recovery is giving up one thing for everything or everyone. So to kind of think through the implications of that. And we know some of our listeners are going to be, hey, you know what? I've got really good self-control with this. I'm fine.
Okay.
Others of you are going to be like, man, I don't want to, this hurts, and that's obviously why we're here.
And maybe some are going, oh yeah, maybe a little bit here. I need to
somebody
course correct.
Somebody be right in the middle with a chance to correct before it gets out of control.
Right.
So yeah, again, think through addiction is giving up, everything for that one thing because you got to have it because if you can't have it, you can't function. But recovery is giving up that one thing, starving it out, getting rid of it for everything or everyone that
Yeah.
matters.
Yeah.
And how do we do this? Well, there's something we can be and there's something we can do. We can be intentional with screen time, control it, not let it control us, which is kind of what we've been hinting at this whole time
Boundaries.
with boundaries. So
Yeah.
we can actually be intentional. It's something that we can control. We do have control over it. And so I would encourage you to, even if you're a person who's like, I'm not too affected by it, think through, the areas where it maybe could potentially be beneficial for you to just monitor yourself. And then the thing that we would really encourage you to do, especially if you're steeped in this a little bit, is create a plan for balancing and controlling your personal screen time. Obviously, we're not talking about, I got to be on my iPad, my laptop. You got to be on your computer for a certain amount of hours a day because that's our job. That's just 2024. It's the year we live in.
Yes.
But when it comes to personal time outside of that and what have you, create a plan so that you're able to balance and control that screen time as much as you can.
Yep.
So any final call outs or calls to action?
Yeah, I would just remind y'all leadership is about people. Screen time, more often than not, the wrong kind of screen time is about us, right? And scratching our own itch. But if we want to be leaders and leaders of quality of character, it's about sacrifice. I mean, leadership is about sacrifice, period. And to do so well and to help and be someone who adds value to others requires setting aside that time and then focusing on people. And sometimes we can use screen time as a tool to connect. I FaceTime with my son who lives in another state every Sunday afternoon. My wife and I sit down and look forward to have that conversation. But that's where screen time is a tool.
Beneficial.
Right. Just remember, leadership is about people. It's about sacrifice. And to do it well, we need to put boundaries on our screen time. Yeah.
So identify your screen time, create a plan to balance it.
Get someone to hold you accountable. Share that plan with somebody and say, will you please help? Ask me. You have full permission. Ask me what you need to ask me to make sure I'm doing this well.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us again. We're back from our summer break. We've got some more topics we want to cover.
I'm excited. I can't wait to the next series coming up.
Yeah, and then we have a series that we're pretty excited about, which we'll be introducing in the weeks to come. Till next time.
Thanks for joining us. Take care.
See you.
Bye.